Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's Friday, it's May 24th, and as I'm saying this, it's my sister's birthday, so I'm gonna have to reach out to her. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. It's 7:48 in the morning, East Coast time, and yes, we have some NFL off-season content. It's the first NFL off-season content that we're doing. It's some QB rankings for really just overall real life, but I'll also be touching on it from fantasy perspectives as well. For the most part, it's gonna be fantasy-based, but we'll give you just your non-fantasy people as well who like the NFL, your takes there as well. So what I'm doing here, and if you're new to the channel, and there's a good chance you're new to the channel, I started this channel last NFL season. It's mainly around fantasy sports and daily fantasy sports, your Draftkings, your FanDuels. I have content I've had it all throughout the NFL season, off season, in the NBA space, MLB right now, golf, all those things. Every single day I make a video, and now I want to get into some more NFL off-season content, the sleeping giant, if you will. I'm excited for the NFL. If you can't see it, I'm extremely excited for the NFL. So welcome to the channel. There's a great chance, like I said, that you are new here because this is my first NFL off-season content. Hit it with a like if you like it. If what's behind me right now is looking interesting or weird, give me a second. I'm going to explain it. I'm a very stats-heavy person in terms of fantasy, in terms of DFS. That's where you get your edge, right? You cannot use your biases to get edges in fantasy sports. You will lose. Emotional bettors lose all the time. That's why nobody can beat Vegas, because 99.9% of the people betting at Vegas are betting with emotion, and they're not betting smart and using stats, whatever it might be. Some more in-depth things that we don't have to get into. But I'll explain it all. For the returning subscribers, yes, there is football content. Here we go. Let's just talk about this from an overall football standpoint. I rank every quarterback where I think they're going to stand this year, and then I'll talk about them from a fantasy perspective as we go down the line, right? And some things that just stand out to me overall. There's obviously some more advanced stats on here that people aren't going to be used to, like D-yard and DVOA. Some of those types of things, NEA, sack percentage, obviously you should be knowing what that is, hopefully, average yards per attempt, why these matter. So we'll get into some of those things. But yes, if you get any value throughout this video at all, I'm not sure how many people are going to view this. It's the NFL, but it is the off-season, the summer, so not many people are probably caring right now. But whenever you watch this, if you get any value, hit me with a subscribe button. Helps a ton. Just trying to make this sort of a career of mine, whether on my own or getting noticed. So thank you so much. Let's break down into it. And you can see here, I have the names blacked out. So I went down through this. I developed all the stats that I think are the most important for fantasy purposes. So what you're seeing right here are these stats, and I might add a few of them, and I probably will, but the ones that I think are the most important for fantasy purposes for quarterbacks, right? These are not for all positions. Obviously, running backs and tight ends and wide receivers have their own key stats that matter, but these are for quarterbacks. So this is what I look at. This is sort of like a dashboard that I'll be using to use my projections closer to the season. So let's start it off. Let's start it off blacking out some of these names. And we'll try and go down to 10. I think this is going to give me like the top 8. So we'll start with the top 8. There you go. So the first one should not surprise anybody here, whether it's real life, whether it's fantasy. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this guy last year lit it up in ways that we have not seen before from a guy who was a second-year player, essentially a rookie coming in, 50 touchdowns, just playing absolutely incredible there. Touchdown or interception ratio being 2.1%, a little bit higher, but for a second-year guy, you're going to take that, especially when he's going out there throwing a touchdown almost 9% of the time, by far leading the NFL, and that's somebody else very close, which we'll get down into. So there's a lot of things to like out of Patrick Mahomes, and it should not be a surprise that he is by far, if you look all the way to the right of my column, I have him at a 372 efficiency rating, or just whatever type of production rating. That is by far, it's 50 points higher than anybody else that's left. Now, that was from his overall last year's standpoint. I don't have 2019 projections right now, but I will be getting those as I get a little bit more time and the season kind of unfolds. You see who all the starters are. But should not surprise anybody. We don't have to spend much time on Patrick Mahomes here. He did loads of things right. His D yards. So D yards means just yards above replacement for the most part. Really, it's just neutralizing the whole field and taking them all at, if they were all in the same situations. And he by far had the most yards, 2,039. We'll put that into perspective for the guy who's last, and I'll give it away, Josh Rosen on this list, all the way at the bottom, negative 1,122. That's how bad he was in average situations compared to the rest of the NFL. And that's how good Patrick Mahomes was. So from the best to the worst, that is the widest differential that we've ever seen in the NFL, because Patrick Mahomes is that good, and Josh Rosen was just really that bad. 3,200 yards difference there. So yes, above the average quarterback, Patrick Mahomes had 2,039 yards if you put them all in neutral types of situations. Same thing for just percentage DVOA, 40%, just so much higher than really everybody outside of Drew Brees, who's 6 on this list. Patrick Mahomes, by far the best option in fantasy, which should not surprise anybody this year. Aaron Rodgers, and I won't spend too much time on everybody, but I'll be blocking out. I'll probably go down to the top 15 on this list and make another video with just the bottom feeders. I don't think people really care about those. But Aaron Rodgers, Number two, Aaron Rodgers had as bad as a year as Aaron Rodgers could have last year. Now, let's give him some slack, right? And I'm a Packers fan, so maybe I'm giving him too much slack and being biased here. But game one is playing on a fractured leg or whatever it might be. He comes back and just dominates the second half, wins that game against the Bears, but didn't really look right. Couldn't run, couldn't really move out of the pocket, which really for Rodgers might be a benefit. I think he scrambles a little bit too much, watching a lot of tape on him, obviously as a Packers fan, a little bit more than the normal person. Yeah, he scrambles a little bit too much, and when he gets outside of the pocket, he tries to make plays happen that don't have to be forced, like those on-the-run plays. If he stays in the pocket a little bit more, it lets those slants develop, and I'm very excited for this new Packers offense. It's going to be an offense where we saw some of the stuff coming out over the offseason, whether it's true or not about Mike McCarthy's offense, that just did not evolve. It did not evolve. Nothing changed about it and from the time that McCarthy got there from the end of it, and that's not good. So a new offensive coordinator coming in, I think this is a really good thing for Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers leading the league in throwaways last year, which obviously hurt his completion percentage. Batted balls, he was also right up there with. So I think these are things that are going to be an outlier for Rodgers in his career. You had a guy in Devontae Adams, just now a true number one wide receiver, who Rodgers really missed about 3 times in terms of just overall touchdowns. Rodgers was off last year. He was terrible. So this year coming back, I have him as the number 2 overall, and this is my rankings are for next year on here, I should say, but the overall stats are from last year. So there's a tons of things to like. I mean, you're still going to have the low interception ratio. Absolutely disgustingly low, really. You're going to have a lot of things that are going to be standing out. And in my opinion, last year for fantasy points wise, and that's what you're getting right there, P 2018 is fantasy points projections, 312.5. You're going to have a better year from that out of Rodgers. This was a career low, and I think a big part of that was the injury, and a big part of that was just really a disconnect with the head coach. That's all out of the way. I think you get a motivated Aaron Rodgers here, who now has potentially what could be a top 5 defense in Green Bay this year from not only last year's moves, getting Jair Alexander and some other guys in that secondary, Josh Jackson, but then this year going in the offseason, picking up loads of guys, getting rid of Clinton Dix, who might be one of the most overrated players in the league, and then going into the draft and getting even more weapons on the defense. It's going to be exciting to say the least. Deshaun Watson, I have at number 3. So again, these are fantasy rankings down the line. It should be no surprise here. Another guy who was battling with some injuries this year. He couldn't take a plane. He had to take a long bus ride because he couldn't get on because of his chest or ribs or whatever it was with his respiratory system. And he's still fine. Look, so the biggest advantage in DFS, one of the biggest advantages, is getting a running quarterback. Guys who can run the ball in DFS get a huge, bigger rating. And DFS is daily fantasy sports if you're somebody who plays season long. Even in the real season-long leagues, guys who run the ball have just a bigger advantage, and you're getting more and more quarterbacks, i.e. Kyler Murray drafted number 1 overall, i.e. Lamar Jackson, a guy who can really only run the ball to be productive, who run the ball. So guys who are going to have those rushing attempts, they're going to have way higher ceilings and way higher floors in fantasy. So yes, Deshaun Jackson is going to beat out guys like Andrew Luck, Drew Brees for me, Matt Ryan, and even Cam Newton, another running quarterback, but just because his propensity to run the ball is a bit higher than other people. He rushed the ball 99 times last year. That's only behind like 2 other guys, and one of them being Cam Newton, barely, who had 101. And again, Deshaun Jackson was injured for some of these games, playing a little bit more timid. Being healthier, I think that you get more out of Deshaun Watson, not Deshaun Jackson. But the other thing to point out, although Cam Newton rushed the ball a couple more times, 2 more times than him, Deshaun Watson was much better, much more efficient. 551 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns. That would be a touchdown more, 60 more yards. So yeah, this guy is going to be up there for me. Another year in the league, had that ACL tear, which was just brutal. So now he's more of this 3rd-year quarterback coming in, more of a veteran. I love Deshaun Watson this year. He's a guy that if he falls in fantasy drafts for season long, I'm going to wait on. He's a guy that I'm hoping will be cheaper to start the year in DFS. I love him. Andrew Luck, number 4. This Colts team might be scary. The additions that this Colts team has made makes this Colts team very scary. Luck, which is he was beautiful last year. He's a guy who's always going to throw interceptions. He's a guy who will probably average an interception per game because he's just that aggressive. And really, he's a smart quarterback, but he's that aggressive. And sometimes he's a Brett Favre type quarterback who will make those mistakes. 39 TDs last year. Touchdown to interception ratio is always something that is important to look at. The TD percentage was 6% above average. Interception percentage, although, yeah, he had 15, so a little bit below average, but we'll take that when you have the pure volume of what he was doing last year. 4,593 passing yards. He had a very good, a little bit of above average DER, so once again, like how good Patrick Mahomes was, double almost what Andrew Luck's was. Just shows you how great of a year Patrick Mahomes had relative to the field. So yeah, I like Andrew Luck. There's a lot of things that you can like about him. I mean, there's some things that just stand out. Yards per game, I don't think is a great stat overall for real life fantasy to go off of. Oh, he had this many yards per game last year. because it's very dependent on some things. If they were a bad team, they had some more garbage time, so they were throwing the ball more. But in terms of fantasy, yards per game is a fine indicator. In real life, trying to paint out a quarterback as a good yards per game, well, then you're probably also thinking that Blake Bortles is one of the best quarterbacks of all time because he gets 100 yards per game in the fourth quarter from garbage time the past few years. But no, Andrew Luck, yeah. I mean, red zone touchdowns were up so much. He had 33, second most in the league, only behind the one and only Patrick Mahomes. He was not getting sacked much, which was a thing that really helped. We thought that line was going to be terrible last year. It was only sacked 2.7% of the time. Red zone completion percentage, 67%. So the fact that they're efficient in the red zone is good. If he's getting there and they're actually scoring and not selling for a ton of field goals, that's good. They increase their offense this year. They increased their defense as well, so they're just a more effective team. I don't see how Andrew Luck doesn't perform even better here. I'm very high on Andrew Luck this year. The only thing that I would say that was maybe a little bit bad for him is he relied on his receivers' separation a little bit. Yards per completion, one of the worst on this sheet, bottom 10 at 10.7. That's something of a concern, so if you want to knock Andrew Luck, it's that he was really relying on wide receivers to get yards after the catch, which, I mean, a big amount of those are your T.Y. Hilton bombs for touchdowns, are your some other guys just on the team just running down the field and just nailing touchdowns. But now you have this red zone percentage that is so nice, right? 33, 67% completion percentage there. And you're getting guys who are just red zone targets, right? There's good guys now on the team that they added, more wide receivers that are red zone dominant players, tall, dominant players. So, yeah, I'm excited for Andrew Luck this year. Number 5, I have Baker Mayfield. And I'm probably higher on Baker Mayfield, but I don't think by that much. I think most people would have Baker Mayfield in a fantasy top 10 this year. And I have Baker Mayfield right there at number 5. And here's the thing. You have a second year of David Njoku, who should be a dominant tight end, and he looks the part. He played decent last year. You have now Jarvis Landry here for a second year coming out of the slot. Let's not downplay the fact that you have a load of running backs. I don't think Kareem Hunt should ever see the field in this team. He's a disgusting human being. But I do think that you have your Nick Chubbs out there. Duke Johnson should be utilized way more, and he was becoming more utilized after they made the coaching change last year. And then, obviously, let's not the elephant in the room. OBJ is going to be changing Baker Mayfield a big amount. When you don't have to rely on Jarvis Landry as your number one receiver, who's mainly a slot receiver, and then forcing the ball down the field to whatever rookies are out there, or David Njoku, and now you can rely on OBJ, who can take your slots to the house or can burn players. He's one of the best, if not the most talented wide receiver in the league. Then, Baker Mayfield is going to probably reduce his interceptions from 12 last year just because it's a second year. Now you have more stable wide receiver core, a deeper wide receiver core, a very talented team overall, running backs, wide receivers, whatever it is. I'm extremely excited for Baker. There's things that I believe are going to go up. Obviously, he didn't play the first 3 or start the first 3 games of the year, so I don't really weigh a lot of his fantasy point production overall. He looked extremely incredible, though, last year for a lot of reasons. Completion percentage is something I think goes up. Lots of throwaways there. Obviously, did not have the weapons that he's going to be having this year, especially with the experience now that a lot of those guys have in this system. Thing that stands out is very nice. His yards per completion is 12. That's a little bit above average. So the higher the yards per completion, the better. It just means they're throwing downfield more. You see Patrick Mahomes leading the league in that at 13.3. It doesn't surprise you. Patrick Mahomes was throwing bombs last year. But the fact that Baker Mayfield is only right around the yard behind that is pretty good. It's above average. So now you get OBJ out there, a guy who's a deeper threat than your Jarvis Landry, number one receiver, whoever they had as backup wide receivers out there that were just not that great. So I'm very high on Baker Mayfield. And let's not forget, this guy also has the rushing upside. He ran 39 times last year, so he pretty much averaged 3 to 4 rushing attempts a game. That's pretty good. Never found the end zone on the rushing attempts, but I'm more than fine going to Baker here. I think that rushing number increases a little bit more. I think you see 50-plus rush attempts right around there out of Baker this year. But really, the arm strength is the main thing that I care about the most. He stayed up on his feet, very close, above average, 4.9% sack rate. So these are things that I'm just liking about Baker. I think the addition of OBJ cannot be understated. But it's not just the addition of OBJ. It's the additions of, or the extra year of experience with this, with Kitchens as a head coach, the extra year for some of these guys like David Njoku, Jarvis Landry in the system, now playing alongside his best friend in OBJ. This should be a very fun year for the Browns. I have Baker as a number 5 ranked fantasy QB this year. Early on, right? We're in Jesus Christ. We are in May. Drew Brees, number 6. Look, passing on Drew Brees or things like that has always been mistaken. Eventually, this guy's going to fall off the cliff like everybody's been wanting or waiting for Tom Brady. But he just plays in an offense that is so dominant. And let's not get confused. This offense is still more of a run-first offense with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram out there. That's what they want to do out there. So that is something that does concern me. I mean, Drew Brees' passing yards last year below 4,000 for the first time in how long? I can't even remember. But let's not also confuse that with him being unproductive. He's a quarterback who completed 74% of his passes. A big part of that is because of Michael Thomas just being an absolute monster. He's a guy who had the second highest yards above replacement, so he was being extremely efficient. That's kind of being shown by his 74% completion percentage, 72% red zone percentage. So this is a guy who was playing a little bit above his head last year, right, with those completion percentage numbers, really setting NFL records in some spots. DVOA, second highest, only behind Patrick Mahomes. In terms of just average defenses going up against him, 36% right there. So, yeah, I like Drew Brees, but I want to say one thing about him. I think he played a little bit over his head last year. The second highest, and barely, 81.9 QBR. 82 was Patrick Mahomes, so a virtual tie there. In NEA, he had an 8.47. A sack percentage, he was not getting sacked either at 3.4%. Lots of things were good. Obviously not a running quarterback. You're not going to get any extra bonus there, so perhaps you like your Cam Newtons higher than him. The only thing that worries me about Drew Brees is, one, the age, right? He still has all the weapons out there, the Kamaras and Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is only going to get better. Same thing for Kamara. You add some more weapons out there. You add an extra year for some of the rookies who were Traquan Smith, whoever it was last year out there, that's now going to have some more time. But I worry about Drew Brees, and I know it's just it's a mistake every single year to pass on this guy because he continues to be great. If you're in a league for full time, that's 6 points to a quarterback, touchdown passes, then I like that. If you're in DFS, it's going to be struggle. It's going to be very defensive specific because overall, the year that Drew Brees had last year, he did not have his greatest passing year in terms of pure yardage, but a big part of that was the overall run emphasis on the ground, more rushing attempts, burning some clock. I worry about Drew Brees because I think that continues. I think you get less yards out of him, or very similar to what you're seeing, but I also think that you see these completion percentage come down. Like, his completion percentage is through the roof. How can he break the record back-to-back years? He's going to have to regress at some point, if not overall completion, definitely in the red zone at 72% of the time. That's just ridiculous. A big part of that is he's throwing dump-offs to Alvin Kamara and very small passes to Michael Thomas, right? His average yards per completion was around 11, which is coming closer to that, one of the worst in the leagues, right? So he's throwing shorter passes. Now he's getting a lot of yards after the catch, relying on his playmakers, which they're great playmakers, but these completion percentages are probably a bit too high, and they worry me. You could go either side of the coin here. You could say, oh, they're short passes. They're going to stay high. These guys are going to continue to miss tackles. Then fine. Then that gives me a little bit more hope in Drew Brees. But right now, he's the guy inside this top 10 that I probably have the most concerns about, mainly because he's not going to be throwing the ball downfield as much. You can see that by 11 yards per completion. His yards per game is going to be going down, which again for fantasy I think is a decent indicator. And the reason is because the rushing attempts are going up, and I don't see why those wouldn't continue to go up as Alvin Kamara ages again, and you have other guys in that backfield. So that is my take on Drew Brees. 7 and 8. We'll stop the video at the top 8, or maybe I'll show you just 9 and 10. And then if people like this video and you watch it and you actually enjoy it, I'll continue to go. I'll cover my 11 through 20, and I'll make a new video. But I'm not going to do that until I get some feedback on this one. So let me know. Matt Ryan at number 7 had sort of a rejuvenating year last year. Kind of got over the no Kyle Shanahan out there. And he looked really good. Julio Jones had a slow start to the year, but ended up being a dominant receiver once again. The addition of Calvin Ridley was huge for this team. Austin Hooper took a step forward as a tight end. Lots of things look good. That was all without Devontae Freeman. You have Tevin Coleman now, not on this team anymore. And you're going to be having some rookies stepping up and some other guys stepping up here. So, yeah, Matt Ryan looked great last year. I mean, just under 5,000 passing yards, was right there, was second only behind Patrick Mahomes in terms of passing yards, in terms of yards per game, behind only Patrick Mahomes and another QB, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But a lot of things to like out of Matt Ryan here. Right around an average yards per completion, which is good. A very good yards per attempt, around 8, which is also good. Some other things that stand out, only 7 interceptions, so we saw Matt Ryan being a little bit better with the ball. Only 1% of his passes, right around there, was being intercepted last year. 35 total touchdowns. There's a lot of things to like. An above average DER and above average DVOA, again, two really good indicators. Red zone percentage, a place where they struggled the year before. He was right around average, so a pretty big boost for him. Not a running quarterback, so you're not going to get much from there. So I like Matt Ryan once again, another year to evolve in this offense that I think this offense is going to take another step forward. You have Julio Jones maybe coming towards the down end of his prime, but he's still right there. He's still one of the most dominant receivers of the game. Now you have an extra year out of Calvin Ridley, a guy who's going to get even better in the slot and become just an absolute weapon. Obviously some more weapons out there. Austin Hooper, whoever it might be in the backfield coming out. This is a younger core now, and I'm really excited to see what Atlanta does this year, especially when you have a division that hopefully the Saints are going to be looking better on defense, but I'm not sure if they get there. The Panthers secondary was something that you could actually pick apart last year, that there could be advances there as well, and Tampa Bay was a team that you could absolutely throw on record bad on defense, so the division also bumps up guys like Drew Brees, guys like Matt Ryan. It's a new year. Some of those things should be fixed, but for all of them to be fixed in 1 year, I don't think so. And that's also taking into account Atlanta's defense is pretty putrid as well for your Drew Brees shares. So That's where I'm at on Matt Ryan. The 8 range, so 6, 7, and 8 are all very close. You can really go any way, and the main guy would be Cam Newton. I would like to bump up all these quarterbacks in the same division here. And the reason I like Cam Newton so much is because what I said earlier, the rushing upside. He ran 101 times last year, so even him being a little bit more timid in his game, like he said before the season started last year, still ran 101 times, still averaged almost 5 yards per attempt at 488, and he had 4 rushing touchdowns. Now, the biggest thing for Cam Newton's upside is the emergence of Christian McCaffrey last year, who is now fully, and you can see Christian McCaffrey been working out, looks like an absolute tank, who is now fully the goal line back there. They're not getting no Jonathan Stewart. They're not getting no whoever it was last year, Mike Tolbert. I don't even know, coming in and trying to take carries away from this guy, C.J. Anderson for a little while. Now it is your Christian McCaffrey goal line back. So if that's the case, it's going to take away from Cam Newton, both in the running game and both in the goal line rushing touchdowns. They're still going to have plays developed for Cam, just less now. There's going to be more for CJ McCaffrey there. So that's my only worry. That's why I have him at 8. That's why I have him behind Drew Brees and Matt Ryan, even though I love running QBs. I still think that he's not going to have the crazy yardage. He's never really been that guy. These guys are going to have 1,000+ yards or right around 1,000 yards more than him, most likely. He's been very bad in terms of his DVOA. He's negative in DVOA. Touchdowns right around there, not the greatest overall. Only 28 combined with rushing and receiving. His interceptions were up. They were worse or below league average, or above league average. Not great. 2.8% interception ratio puts him really in the bottom half of the league last year. So a lot of things that aren't really good. His yards per completion were 10.6. Now his yards per completion 10.6 doesn't really worry me too much because it doesn't translate to a god awful fantasy or yards per game like we've seen from some of the other guys below him. But to rank him 8th is pretty bold on my part when you factor a 10.6 yards per completion. But let's break down into that number. He's throwing swing passes to Christian McCaffrey the entire game, right? I mean, Christian McCaffrey, his receptions last year, like breaking receptions records and whatever he did, yeah, that's why, because he's throwing 0-yard passes that are just killing his yards per completion. So we have to keep that in mind all the time with this new emergence of the pass-catching running backs with your Alvin Kamara's, lowering Drew Brees' yards per completions, which are Christian McCaffrey's, but your Saquon Barkley's, things of that nature. So that's where I'm at on Cam Newton overall. I like the rushing upside, but I think the rushing upside takes a bit of a hit. It did last year, so it took a decent hit last year, but I think it takes even more of a hit this year as McCaffrey becomes even more of that guy. I think he's fine overall because of the rushing upside allows him to stabilize out around these top 10 guys. That's why I have him at 8 and not 6 or 7. Because I kind of think with the rushing upside, with his passing abilities, that you get right around what you would get out of these 6 and 7 and Matt Ryan and Drew Brees. So that's where I'm at with Cam Newton. 9 and 10 we'll show you quickly. We'll show you 9 and 10 quickly, and then I'm going to end this video, boys and girls, and then I'll let you know. You guys can let me know if you want to see the rest. Jameis Winston, number 9. Jared Goff, number 10. So Jameis Winston, he was a guy who this Bucs quarterback overall, combined with Fitzpatrick and Winston, was like a historically great offense last year. Terrible defense, historically great offense. And Winston is now going to at least get the option to be that guy. So you're looking at last year's number, you're not going to see a lot of great things, right? And the big reason why is he played like half the games because Fitzpatrick, to start the year, he was suspended, Winston, and then they just switched on and off benching it. It was like a reality TV show there. So a lot of things are going to look terrible, and they should. He had one of the worst interception rates last year, like threw 4 interceptions in a game multiple times. Cost me a ticket to the Fantasy Football World Championship for Draftkings because he couldn't just stay in the game for another quarter and just get me like 50 more yards. He had to throw 4 interceptions, and he got pulled. So a lot of things are going to look bad. This offense is better this year. It has improved this year. The defense, it has to get better. It cannot be historically bad again. Overall, I think Winston being put in this offense, and this is with me saying that he stays the QB. He has matured. They want him as the QB. He's not going to get pulled and yanked around like last year. This is me giving him a 16-game sample like I'm giving everybody here for the most part. I like him as number 9. He's being put into an offense that is just loaded with weapons. O.J. Howard is going to be one of my favorite tight ends just going forward, just absolutely dominant. Mike Evans had probably one of the quietest, like 1,400-yard years last year, just being an absolute monster, and nobody talked about him because he's just quiet. He's to himself. A lot of guys on this team. Chris Godwin, another guy that I am so high on. Deshaun Jackson being gone gives Chris Godwin really the wide receiver 2 duties, and he is a true Penn Stater right there. Love Penn State right here. How you doing, Penn State alum? Yeah, Chris Godwin is really a true number 1. He could be that. And now you have Mike Evans out there as well, O.J. Howard, Cam Brate still. So lots of things. The running back situation they're trying to improve upon. Guys coming back from injuries, whatever it might be. Yeah, Winston at number 9 is great. I really can't point to his stats this year. He's another guy who will run the ball. He ran the ball 49 times, and really that number should be closer to 70, which is another bump that you'll be getting out of him. If he plays full season, and really the biggest thing for him is if he limits his mistakes, he limits his interception ratios. He threw 14 interceptions last year. That's not great. So when that happens, especially when you don't have as many completions as some of these other guys, and you have some of the highest interception numbers in the game and you're playing like 6, 7 less games in them, that's not great. If he fixes that, if he fixes the mistakes, the interceptions, or just reduces it to more of a league average or even a little bit above league average, just not the worst in the league type numbers, he's going to stay in these games more. He's going to have the ability to throw the ball wherever he wants, especially once again in this division with a very bad Falcons secondary with a decent Saints secondary, right? Not the greatest, definitely not the greatest last year. And then you have the Panthers, again, a decent secondary, but something that can be attacked. So, yeah, I like Jameis Winston. Jared Goff's at number 10. This one, Jared Goff could be either number 10, he could be either number 13. It starts to get into this iffy range where I like Jared Goff more than the guys below him, which you can see that if you want me to. Just let me know. Again, this is a big factor of coaching. This is a big factor of scheme and offense. I think Jared Goff is a good talent. The more he gets time in this league, the more he will develop. But I think the system that he's in, as it would help anybody when you're in a Sean McVay system with 3 wide receivers who are just so dominant, your Brandon Cooks, your Robert Woods, and now you're going to be getting back his favorite target of all of them, your Cooper Kupps. Yeah, I like that a lot. And then you're going to have, Todd Gurley seems to be limited, and I really don't know what's going on with Todd Gurley. He still has talent back there if he is going to be fine. The interceptions for Jared Goff are something that he has to limit, but the way that his team plays the game, it's not that big of a deal for the team overall. But for fantasy purposes, yeah, we'd like to see that come down. Yards per completion was great, so this is good. He's throwing downfield. This team obviously throws downfield when you have a Brandon Cooks as a weapon. You had your Cooper Kupps, your Robert Woods getting just open deep for big touchdowns. You also have talented tight ends on this team. Look, the Rams are good. I don't have to tell you that. They went to the Super Bowl. So 12.9 yards per attempt is the second highest, third highest in the league, only behind Patrick Holmes and somebody else lower on this list that we will get to. A lot of things that I do like for Jared Goff. He wasn't afraid to run. Now his running was really just short spurs, right? He ran 42 times, and a lot of that is really not running. It's just kind of scrambling, or even some of that counts as sacks. Got in the end zone on the ground a couple of times. Overall, 34 touchdowns. TD percentage was nice at 5.7%. Again, interception ratio right around league average. Could come down a little bit. The things that do stand out as really good and an indicator of success to come, and this offense is clearly a reason why, is an above average, 1,092, right around what you're seeing out of your Andrew Luck last year. Very similar to Andrew Luck, so as good of a year that Andrew Luck had. Same type of year in terms of D yardage for Jared Goff, and in terms of DVOA, better than Andrew Luck. So those are spots that I do like. Those are spots that I do like to pick on another year in the system. I like Jared Goff at number 10. So that's where my ratings are right now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is that what you are thinking? I'm sure that I'm bullish. It's going to be different than a lot of people's perspectives. If you want to see more of the ratings, I can keep going down the list. I can do some running back videos. Let me know if you like this video. I appreciate it. It's probably a quicker video, but let me know what you think about it. My name's Sal. Best of luck in your days. Best of luck in your weeks, everybody. Peace out, gang.